Imagine two men living in the Middle Ages. Both are 65 years old. Both have survived wars, bad harvests, disease, and deadly winters. One is a farmer, the other is a nobleman. But despite being the same age, these two men are about to experience old age in completely different ways. So what did getting old actually look like in the Middle Ages? Medieval society had no pension system or retirement age. For our two men, there was no official support waiting when their bodies started to fail. What happened next depended on what they had built around themselves during their working lives: their land, their savings, their children, their community. Those were not comforts. They were their only insurance. Everything else follows from that single fact. But before we follow these two men into old age, there's one myth we need to clear up: that medieval people only lived to 30. It's easy to believe. After all, the average life expectancy in much of the medieval world was around that age. But an average can hide a lot. It includes babies who died within weeks of being born, children who never made it past their first few years, and young people who died from disease, hunger, war, or accidents. That means a life expectancy of around 30 did not mean that most adults died at 30. If you survived childhood, your chances of living for several more decades were much better. Some people made it into their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even beyond. So our two men reaching 65 isn't as strange as it might sound. They are simply among the people who survived long enough to see old age. So the question was never really whether medieval people got old. They did. The question was, what happened when they got there? There was no official starting line for old age in the Middle Ages. Most ordinary people did not even know their exact birth date because births were not routinely recorded. The farmer might remember that he was born during a particular king's reign or around a famous famine, but not the specific year. Old age was something people recognized through the body, through what it could no longer do, and through how the people around them began to treat them differently. By the time our farmer reached 65, his body was no longer giving gentle warnings. After decades of heavy physical work, his joints are painful. His eyesight and hearing have gotten worse. His teeth are worn down or missing. Old injuries that healed badly years ago are making themselves felt again. And the work that once filled his days, the digging, the lifting, the long hours in the fields, is becoming harder to do. But this is where the hands come in. Old age in medieval times was not the end of usefulness. For most people, it was a handover. The farmer's hands, which have worked the same land for 40 years, begin passing the heaviest work to younger ones. His sons take over the digging and the lifting. He moves to lighter tasks: tending animals, repairing tools, watching grandchildren, helping manage the household. But when the village argues about something that happened 30 years ago, his memory is the only record anyone has. The work his hands pass on is not just labor. It is decades of knowledge that cannot be written down because most people around him cannot read. The nobleman's hands tell a different story. He is aging too. His joints hurt. He may no longer be able to ride or fight the way he once did. But he has something the farmer does not: enough people and property around him to absorb the work his body can no longer do. His servants manage the household. Younger men handle the estate. His heirs are ready and waiting to take on more responsibility. So he passes his responsibilities over gradually, stepping back into the role of advisor, manager, decision-maker. His hands still hold power. They just hold it differently now. This is one of the biggest differences between medieval old age and the modern idea of retirement. There was no clean break between working and resting. People gradually changed what their hands did. Old age was not the end of a person's contribution. It was a handover. And for those who had family around them, old age was not only about what they could no longer do. It could also mean having more time with the people they had spent their lives raising. Older parents and grandparents could remain part of the household, helping with children, sharing what they knew, telling stories about the family and the past, and passing their experience on to the next generation. Their value was no longer just in how much work their hands could do, but in everything their years had taught them. Now imagine our nobleman reaching old age without his children. He may have lost his heirs, but the land itself is still there. He still has property, wealth, servants, and perhaps other relatives who can help him. Losing his children would be devastating, but his resources could keep him from falling into poverty. But for our farmer, the story is very different. If he has no children or close family left, there may be nobody to take over the heavy work or provide food when he can no longer earn it. Without land or savings to fall back on, he may have to rely on monasteries, almshouses, and other charitable institutions for basic care. But these places had limited resources and could not help everyone. For an elderly farmer with no family and nothing saved, old age could eventually mean begging simply to survive. And if illness or injury came on top of all of that, old age could become even harder. One of the most painful companions of medieval old age was arthritis. Joints that had spent decades doing hard work could become stiff, swollen, and painful, making even simple movements harder. For our farmer, years of physical labor could leave their mark on his knees, hands, and back. The hands that had planted, carried, built, and worked the land were now beginning to struggle with the very work they had done for decades. But here is where the nobleman's comfortable life turned against him. The rich version of arthritis was gout. It was made significantly worse by the food eaten by the rich: red meat, wine, and organ meats. Gout happened when uric acid crystals built up inside the joints, causing intense pain. The pain has been described as feeling like broken glass grinding inside the bone. The more a nobleman had eaten and drunk well during his life, the more his joints could make him pay for it in old age. The farmer's hands ached from hard work. The nobleman's hands ached from fine dining. Medieval medicine had no antibiotics, no modern treatment for chronic conditions, and no reliable way to manage many of the illnesses and physical problems that came with age. Sadly, when the body failed, it was never just a health problem. It was an economic one. For our farmer, losing the strength to walk, lift, or work the fields could mean losing his ability to earn food. His body was his livelihood. If it stopped working, the farm suffered with him. Our nobleman had a different kind of protection. He could hand physical work to servants and younger men. His land could still produce food even when his own body could no longer do the work. His illness could make life painful, but it did not necessarily take away his income. For the farmer, his hands were his livelihood. For the nobleman, his hands could afford to stop working. Which is why religion mattered so much to people in this stage of life. For medieval Christians, old age was a visible reminder that life was coming to an end. Older people made wills, arranged their burials, gave property to family or to the church, and prepared spiritually for death. Death was not something medieval people pretended was far away. It was something they planned for. So what happened when medieval people got old? The same thing that has always happened. The body changed what it could do. And the question was always what you had around you when it did. Two men, both 65. One passed his days giving orders from a comfortable estate, surrounded by people whose job it was to keep his life running. The other was still trying to do enough to put food on his table. Not because of how old they were, because of what their hands had built, and who was left to receive it when passing the work became necessary. Growing old in the Middle Ages was not simply about how many years you had lived. It was about what you had left around you when your strength began to run out.